Okay, welcome everyone. Please take a seat. Okay, great. Okay, welcome everyone. The first lecture of this series. Well, I will first pick this slide. So welcome to the first lecture in a series of Stadssalons Urbains, a lecture series with the theme of Artful Cities. I am Geert van der Meers. I'm a professor of art education and culture education at this university, working on art education and youth initiatives in urban and or digital settings. I want to make an introduction more on the theme of this lecture series, and then of course I will introduce the first speaker of this, the speaker of this lecture. But the first facts to know that this lecture series was organized by BUCUS, which is the Brussels Center for Urban Studies, in collaboration with the BUILD research team, which is a research center on innovation in learning and diversity. So we focus on arts education in different settings as a way to promote participation and inclusion, to kind of promote systemic change. And of course, the urban setting is one of the main settings to do this. Where we're enacting change, and that's what links us to this lecture. Joining forces with BUCUS, we wanted to explore in this lecture series how the connection between the arts and the urban can be productively viewed. To quote the text on the website, cities are more than concrete infrastructures designed by architects, urban planners, or policymakers. Artists and creatives have much to contribute to the collective imagination and effective experience of urban life. Art occupies, though, an ambivalent position in this dynamic. While it can create spaces of encounter, reveal hidden stories, and challenge dominant narratives, it also increasingly is instrumentalized to serve political, economic, or branding agendas. Kind of to shed light on this kind of position of the arts in relation to the city, we invited 5 speakers with all differing backgrounds, differing positions, differing jobs, scheduled in October until December, so please check the posters, check the flyers for the dates. Always in this location, starting at 5:30, so please come to the next lectures. You're more than welcome. For instance, the next lecture is Kara Courage, who will talk about placemaking and how it plays a role in the life of the cities on October 21st. Okay, that's so far the practicalities. Tonight we have our first speaker, Maria Lind. She joins us from Sweden, more specifically Kiruna, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, which is in the north of Sweden. And you will notice, well, you will know at the end of the lecture, this is not just a geographical detail, as you will soon find out. Maria Lind has worn a lot of different hats and clothes throughout her career. She's a curator and director in various museums, among which were Moderna Museet, Tensta Kunsthal in Stockholm, and I have the books here somewhere, where she was director, and she now is director of the Kin Museum of Contemporary Art in Kiruna. She has published many books, many writings on art criticism, for instance, 7 years, I'll hold it up, 7 years, the rematerialization of art, and like the variety of topics in her art criticism links more or less to every imaginable topic in the art field that has happened in like the last couple of decades. Institutional critique, social practice art, the material form of art, the educational aspect of art, curation, the museum, and not to forget the important line or thread of how art and museum relates to the urban and natural context. Be that multicultural neighborhoods around, for instance, Tensta in Stockholm, the Tensta Kunsthal, or also the larger neoliberal landscape. But as someone who does the introduction, I'm quite aware that I'm also only like scratching the surface here of who Maria Lind is and what she does and has done, which is a bit of a failure of mine as someone who does the introduction. So that made me think of a poem, as often things do. It's a poem by Nobel Prize-winning Wisła Szymborska, who wrote about the impossibility of doing a resume, of writing an introduction about yourself or someone else. She writes what needs to be done. Fill out the application and enclose a resume. Regardless of the length of a life, a resume is best kept short. Concise, well-chosen facts are de rigueur. Landscapes are replaced by addresses. Shaky memories give way to unshakable dates. Luckily for us, by listening to Maria's lecture, I'm sure we will be able to at least replace my list of titles that I talked about Maria and events in her life by the fascinating landscapes of Kiruna. So please, Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here, and I'm impressed by all of you turning up at 5:30 on a Friday afternoon. It's not that common, I think. So thank you for doing that. And also thank you for the invitation. It's interesting to be part of a context that defines itself so much as a platform that wants to discuss an urban setting, and I think you will understand why in a moment when I start my presentation. A hole in the real, Kin Museum of Contemporary Art in Giron, or Kiruna. Did anybody see this? In the end of August, it was in the news everywhere. The church in Kiruna was moved. A piece of architecture from 1912, built in wood, 40 by 40 meters, around 675 tons. It was moved 5 kilometers from Old Kiruna to New Kiruna. And the reason for this is that Old Kiruna might collapse due to the world's largest underground iron ore mine, which exists in Kiruna since the year 1900, roughly. So this spectacular event is something that affects the place where I have been working since September 2023 in depth. And where is this place? Well, it's in the northern hemisphere, here depicted by Elle Hansa, or Hans Ragnar Mathisen, who is a Sami artist, an elder, based in Tromsø, on the Norwegian side of Sápmi. Since the 70s, he has worked with maps as his artistic medium. Some of you might have seen them in the art exhibition Documenta in 2017 in Kassel, where he was one of 9 Sami artists who were invited for the first time to this important event of contemporary art. And as you can see from this map, when he's using it as his artistic medium, they're often drawn, sometimes they're watercolors as well. He also plays with perspectives. So instead of taking the usual structure of a map for given, he twists and turns them, and not least also changing place names. And in this way, in this map, the Sami people, which is Europe's only recognized indigenous people, is immediately connected to the many indigenous peoples of the northern hemisphere. Sápmi, the homeland of the Sami people, exists in Sweden, Norway, Finland, and the very north of Russia. There are different Sami languages, as you can see from this map, and in Kiruna, which is called Giron, in North Sami, that is the language that is spoken by the indigenous group in Kiruna. I'm not Sami. I do not speak for the Sami, neither for anyone else who has spent a lot of time in Kiruna. I'm a newcomer, and I'm just learning as I'm going now. Here you can see a map which might be a bit more familiar to you. and the red dot is Kiruna. It's 200 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. And the municipality is the top part here. It's roughly the same size as Slovenia. And the population of this municipality in total is 23,000 people. I repeat, 23,000 people. So it is sparsely populated. If you're fans of the Guinness Book of Records, you might have come across Kiruna because it's described there as the world's largest city, if you count a municipality as a city. So it would be a city the size of Slovenia. Here you can see. The white area on this map is the region of Norrbotten. It's the furthest most northern region in Sweden. It consists of 14 municipalities. Kiruna is one of them. And the entire area of Norrbotten is 1/4 of Sweden. And again, to compare, it's 20% larger than Austria. So we're speaking fairly large territories here. And the Sami people have been here since time immemorial. Many of them are still reindeer herders, and here you can see how they have coexisted until very recently with urban developments of different kinds. In 1900, the town was formally established due to the mine. It's called LKAB. It is today a state-owned company. It's a big profit maker. If things go wrong with this mining company, like it did last winter, when the train track broke down, taking the iron ore from Kiruna to Narvik on the Atlantic coast in Norway, it was visible in the GNP of Sweden. So it is a national treasure, you could say, and a national concern, and obviously a huge hole in the middle of an otherwise beautiful landscape. It's mountainous and it's also tundra. Some 10-20 kilometers away, you have a forest, but with fairly small trees compared to if you go a little bit further south. So this mining town was built because of the mine, and it had from the beginning quite an ambition in terms of both the city plan, which was shaped in such a way that the climate conditions were taken into consideration. For instance, there are very few straight streets in Old Kiruna as a way of breaking the wind, which can be rather strong otherwise. There is also a tradition to work with some of the most well-known, and I would also say best architects. And on the left-hand side, it's the old City Hall from 1963, which was torn down in 2018 for the same reason as the church was moved. And on the right-hand side, the celebrated British-born, but for a long time Sweden-based architect Ralph Erskine, two housing complexes. If you have studied Arctic architecture, you would have surely come across his name. They were torn down, finishing about a year ago. And this continues. The church moved at the end of August. 1 week later, the mining company called for a press conference announcing that another 30% of Old Kiruna will be torn down. 2,600 housing units, 6,000 people in 10 years' time. It is crazy. So the gray area that you can see here is the old area that has been torn down so far, including the old City Hall, the housing complexes I just showed you. And then the second layer, the green, the blue, and the pink, that is the new area that will be erased in the next 10 years. Some buildings will be moved, and that has already happened in addition to the church or even before the church, but that is a minority of the buildings. Although the rhetoric of the mining company is that the town is moving, that's not the case. Some buildings are being moved. Most of the town is being demolished. And a new part of town is being built, and that's on the right-hand side of this map. This means that the old town is looking like a demolition site, so every week something is missing. It's a very special feeling. A lot of destruction and pain, luckily no casualties so far, but it still speaks the language of destruction. New Kiruna, the first building in New Kiruna, was this circular building, which is the town hall or the city hall. It opened in 2018, and it's inside this building that KIN Museum of Contemporary Art is housed. The architect is Henning Larsen, a Danish architect, also known for designing the art museum in Umeå, another northern town in Sweden. And you might recognize on the right-hand side the bell tower. It was actually sitting on the roof of the old city hall. So they have retained some elements from the old architecture. And KIN Museum of Contemporary Art was opened at the same time as the City Hall in 2018. It's a very small museum, 7.5 employees at the moment, and it's both a municipal and a regional museum. This is important because we are not supposed to only work in Kiruna, but also in the whole region that I mentioned, Norrbotten, which is 20% larger than Austria, and with all in all 14 different municipalities. The mission is to work with contemporary art, and we're constantly interweaving the local, the regional, the national, and the international. When I came on board 2 years ago, the museum was in a fairly bad shape, I have to say. There had been a few crises in terms of the architecture. The top floor roof was leaking. The team didn't collaborate very well, and so on. So in a way, it's been 2 years of intensive work on the infrastructure, on the team, and also getting an interesting and relevant program running. An important step in this process was the establishing of what you see here, which is the lobby furniture. So inside the City Hall, which is a wow building, if you look at the right-hand image, you come inside and you have to imagine that you're more or less walking in from a landscape which is a tundra-like landscape, and you have this golden, peculiar interior. It's not so easy to read at first glance. So the cubicles that you see to the left in the image, that's where you have important municipal functions, like the assembly room of the city council, the city government also have their premises there, and the circle, the round bit, that's where all the civil servants and the politicians have their offices. And KIN's spaces are also in the golden cubicles on 5 different floors in the middle. So an interesting and complex building, quite labyrinthic and not easy to navigate. So we had to figure out a way of making ourselves visible for everybody entering the lobby of this space. And we commissioned the artist Luca Frey to make a mobile lobby piece, which is reception furniture, and a shop at the same time. It's on wheels, so it can be moved around, and it also can be open and closed. So when the units are closed, it's like cupboards on wheels. And this is what it looks like when you take a closer look at it. And from above, it looks like this. It's kind of a grand building, I have to say. Another step, a measure that needed to be taken was to think about visual communication. And for a long time, I've tried to, in my work with different institutions, including Tensta Konsthall, that was mentioned before, avoid as much as possible being part of branding culture. Obviously, an institution needs to have some kind of recognizable way of communicating, but how could we think about being that without falling into what we know as the traditional methods of branding? So the visual dialect that we are using today is an attempt at that, and it was developed by two Sami artists based in Kiruna, Inga Victoria Pove and Fredrik Prost, and two graphic designers and communicators in Stockholm, Johanna Levengard and Benedetta Krippa. And it's based on vernacular visual culture, i.e. Elements from Sami craft that refer to happiness, luck and prosperity, plus time and the passing of time. So these visual signs, let's say, appear and they change. And it's all involving the color green. Because in the complex building that I tried to explain to you, the graphic designers and communicators immediately said, we can't communicate with language anymore. It's too complex. We have to have some kind of signal, and a color is obviously a useful signal in that sense, and hence the green color. And we operate in 4 languages. So it's Swedish, it's North Sami, it's meänkieli, which is a Finnish dialect spoken by a big minority in the north of Sweden, and actually also in the north of Norway, and English. So we try and have all basic language information in the 4 languages. We don't really manage to do everything, but everything is in Swedish and English at least. And certainly you are familiar with the challenges of working with 2 languages all the time. But it's definitely worth it, I think, in our case. Establishing a website, another obvious, important early step in order to build a new infrastructure. And the way we work is using as a starting point, dig where you stand. It's a quote from Sven Lindqvist, who was a Swedish author and public intellectual, I would say, who in the 70s triggered a virtual popular movement by a book by this title, which was trying to encourage people to, as amateurs, research their own history, and particularly the history of their workplaces. And he used his own background as an example of doing that. And you would have study circles in many different places across the country. This actually also spread, the Dig Where You Stand movement, to Germany and a little bit to Britain as well. So we're trying to dig where we stand, to start with that, but then, as I mentioned, to interweave the local, the regional, the national, and the international. And we follow 3 loose strands, you could say, in the program. One is hand, heart, and brain. So it's artists who are interested in the manual labor, in the work of the hand, in craft, in different ways, and also repurposing recuperated old craft traditions for contemporary and future use. The second one is something that is overlooked in the region, which I would describe as fairly macho, and that is women in the north. And the third one is the critical zone. You might be familiar with this notion, established by scientists some 25 years ago, to describe what goes on between the crust of the Earth and the end of the atmosphere, and a way of also getting away from the dichotomy of nature and culture and thinking about the interaction between all kinds of scientific disciplines, more being in touch with each other than existing in silos next to one another. And those who make this possible is the fabulous team. 7.5 people right now. Once a month, we do what we call a dislocated staff meeting. As all teams, we need to have a weekly meeting. And once a month, we go somewhere else. We ask if we can borrow a meeting space and then to get a tour of the place. It can be an organization, it can be a school, it can be a company, and in this case it is the LKAB mine, but in a village about 50 kilometers from Kiruna, where they are processing the iron. So doing the dislocated staff meetings, of course, is interesting for us because we learn about what is going on in the region. It would be lovely to do specific site visits or study visits, but we don't really have the time or the money to do that. So this is a way of being able to get a teaser of what is going on at the same time as we do something that we really need to do. And certainly we can invite those we visit back to the museum, and we can also offer them, please come to us and use our space if you want to have a team meeting. And this has proven to be a pretty efficient way of actually getting to know lots of people in the region. And talking about the region, how do you go about trying to understand the place where you're at if you're a newcomer? Some of the team members are from Kiruna, some are not, and those who are from Kiruna might not be so familiar with the rest of the region of Norrbotten. So I started out early on making a point of visiting all the 14 municipalities, and by devising 3 small-scale traveling exhibitions, we could also concretely collaborate with libraries and with art centers, because there are quite a few art centers in the region, but they're not run professionally. It would be the local art association running them, and they are eager to take on board exhibitions that are already made with contemporary artists, some with a local connection, some might be with works by artists who never showed in the region before. So this is, in a way, a tool of getting to know specific potential partners for further projects down the line. It would not be possible to develop an art project from scratch unless we know each other from before. So this is actually a good way of doing precisely that, getting to know each other. This is a combination of 2 of those traveling exhibitions in the municipality of Arjeplog, where there is a museum. Mediation is at the core of what we're doing. Mediation in the sense of programming, some people would call it learning. It is lectures, workshops, guided tours, and also having an art workshop. An art workshop that is multi-purpose, so we can host school classes, we can do craft workshops focusing on specific techniques, and we also have an open door policy on Saturdays, creative Saturdays. So you can try different artistic techniques, and importantly, there is a sewing machine. And this has proven to somehow fill a gap. There is a small campus in Kiruna called the Space Campus, because there is an institute for space research in Kiruna, and it's connected to Luleå Technical University in the region. So they have a master's course and a lot of researchers actually, and they tend to come and use the sewing machine on Saturdays. We do art camps every school holiday, 3 to 5 days, typically relating to the exhibitions that are on. And here it's Bernd Kraus, who's here tonight, a Brussels-based artist, who started Kiruna's first art academy, tongue-in-cheek. And this will also go on for the winter break in February of next year. Everything we do is a collaboration, and this might go into the nitty-gritty details of what it means to run an art institution, but I want to dwell on this for a moment. Collaboration is most of the time more interesting and rewarding than working on your own. And it has also become more and more of a necessity. We need to share resources, and this is definitely to do with trying to be agile, trying to think in terms of sustainability. And also it is productive in terms of relationships. And one example is what you see here. It's an installation called The Living Room by Sami artist Katarina Speak Skum, and what you see is on view at KIN right now. It's a Sami alternative to interior design, using traditional techniques such as reindeer hides. The poofs, the little seats, are made from reindeer skin, hides, and the artist is definitely involved with all steps in the process of tanning the hides and then sewing them. The materials she's using for the rest is connected to Sami regalia, and the leftovers when she's making these outfits, you are not supposed to throw anything away in this tradition. And the floor dividers that you can see with branches, they are inspired by traps for catching grouse, the mountain grouse that is very common in the north. So this started in an unexpected way. The book fair in Gothenburg happens once every year in September, and it's the biggest cultural event in the Nordic countries, with tens of thousands of visitors, and they always have a theme. And last year it was Sápmi, Sami land, and the organization in charge of the booth was a writers' association, a Sami one, and they invited other Sami organizations to suggest activities for the booth. And we were also invited as a museum, which was a little bit surprising, but super nice. And we realized that they had no plans for, and even no budget for how to shape the booth. So Katarina Speak Skum was then invited to shape the booth, and we could purchase the works for the collection. So it became a win-win situation. Incredible visibility that we would never have in Kiruna. with all the visitors in Gothenburg, and they got a beautiful booth for that week. And here we can see Katarina introducing the work also. So the collection, we have a small collection, today around 200 works, and we are buying works that we have been involved with in one way or another. It's not about going to galleries and shopping for art. So that goes also for Besrad Khosravi Nouri, who's a Stockholm-based artist originally from Tehran, and his inspiring project about, or taking as a starting point, the children's cartoon Professor Baltasar that was made in Zagreb in ex-Yugoslavia from 1967 onwards, and which became a success in countries connected to the non-aligned movement and to so-called neutral countries, including Sweden. This is a work by emerging artists dealing with this Finnish-speaking minority that I mentioned, Karin Keiso and Josse Turesson. And here is just the current display. We change them quite regularly. And also working with artists on the ground, making sure that artists from elsewhere can come and visit. We're doing residencies, and one of the recent residency artists is Dee Harding from Brisbane, who is working a lot with his Aboriginal background, and as part of what he will do with us in about a year, he did a workshop with children at the Sami school in a village in the municipality of Kiruna. You might be familiar with Ottobong Nkanga, based in Antwerp. We're working on a project with her as well. It will probably be realized in 2027. Local artists, certainly both interesting and significant. The most well-known one today is probably Britta Marakat-Labba, whose embroidered and appliqued work talk about the history of the Sami, the mythology, contemporary life. And she was also one of the 9 artists invited to Documenta in 2017 in Kassel. So we did a big retrospective with her a year ago. And this is possibly her most celebrated work, the 24-meter-long embroidery called Historia, that we could show in the lobby of the City Hall. So something that everybody entering the building had to approach in one way or another. And here I just have some images of her work, where you can also see that the craft side is essential. So her Sami background, she's coming from a reindeer herding family, is still definitely the basis of everything she's doing. And as part of her retrospective, we did a series of 5 seminars. And this is a way of working that I hope we can continue. The seminars were thematizing things that she brings up in her work, that things that are urgent for the Sami population. It was curated by a journalist, Arne Müller, who has written extensively about the North, specifically about the so-called green transition or the green transformation, with the ideas around how whatever goes on in terms of the industry in the North should become more environmentally friendly, whether that is realistic or not, was discussed. So we had loads of people coming to these seminars that were obviously touching a nerve with many locals. And we were also streaming it at a cultural center in Stockholm in order to increase the link or emphasize the link between the North and the South, because there is definitely much less knowledge about the North on behalf of the South than the other way around. Dig Where You Stand. This returns again and again. One way was that as part of Britta Marakat-Labba's retrospective, we highlighted permanent works by her that exist in the region of Norrbotten 365 days per year. So we organized seminars and guided tours around those works. So this is a public work on a facade in the town of Gällivare. And this is the curtain at the Sami Museum in Aite, which is in Jokkmokk, yet another municipality. And as part of her retrospective, we also had an artist in residence, the indigenous artist Aki Tami from the Himalayas, who spent 3 months there, got to know Britta and many other indigenous artists and makers. So to go back to this idea of the 3 strands, Britta Marakat-Labba's work is actually part of all 3 strands: hand, heart, brain, women in the north, and the critical zone. Her later work from around 2010 hones in on environmental issues, extractivism, and climate change, which is more accelerated in the north than in the south. The closer you get to the poles, the more palpable it is. Just a few more examples of projects we did. This is an indigenous artist from Brazil, Glyceria Tupinambá, and her kin, who have been working on feather cloaks, a technique and a ceremonial object that the Tupinambá have used for centuries, but there are no remaining feather cloaks in Brazil. So the artist and her kin went on a long journey trying to recuperate the knowledge and making them themselves. So this exhibition showed one of the newly made cloaks, plus the complex process of gaining that knowledge by traveling to European museums to research them on site there. And here you can see Glyceria and Katarina in a conversation. So this side of having presentations, seminars, lectures, conversations plays quite a role in what we do at the museum, and they often take place literally in the exhibition space, among the art. We do not have a separate space that we can use for that. So the last few images come from an event that we did in February this year, and we did a similar one in February of 2024, and we will do one in 2026 as well. We call it Konstfesten, with 23,000 people in the municipality of Kiruna, 18,000 in the town itself. We have to generate our own context if we want to think about a more art-related context. Of course, there is a context with the local inhabitants, people passing through Kiruna and so on. But if we want to have more of a discourse connected to, let's say, contemporary art and urban issues, participation, etc., we have to really work on that ourselves. So Konstfesten is an occasion for us to do it. We invite a number of people that we work with anyway, plus other speakers, spend 3 to 4 days together with lots of talking, but also festivities and excursions like the one you can see here. And the next one, in case anybody is curious, is the 19th through the 22nd of February. A few more examples to give you flesh to the bones. We were inspired this year by an anniversary. In 1925, a unique educational experiment took place on an estate south of Stockholm called Fogelsta. 5 women suffragettes who had been fighting for decades for women's right to vote decided, when women finally won the right to vote in Sweden in 1918, that something needed to be done to help women practice citizenship. So they started a women's citizenship school at this estate, Fogelsta. It ran from 1925 until 1954 with courses in history, in philosophy, international relations, psychology, but also a lot of practical things. And here you can see some of the participants. Around 4,000 women from all walks of life from across Sweden went to these courses. They were experimental in terms of pedagogy. They invented a municipality that they called Komtemotta, and here is a map of that imaginary town. And they used it for a role play. So they took turns playing the different roles within this town in order to practice citizenship, decision-making processes, etc. The artist Olivia Plender from London was looking at this material and found that they also cross-dressed as they played the different roles. So there were many other aspects to these courses at Fogelsta, quite a bit of gender bending, for instance, and she has made a series of drawings based on photographs from the school. So because of the centenary, we did an exhibition that we called Komtemotta, the name of the imaginary village, a pioneering safe space for women, where we could also include drawings by one of Sweden's most celebrated mid-century artists, Siri Derkert, who went to the courses for about 10 years, and it was crucial for her artistic development. Drawings made during the lectures and seminars, etc., very lively. And maybe you can guess what the women are up to here. They are practicing something crucial if you want to practice citizenship, to use your voice, a choir. So they had a choir in order for women to really literally practice using the voice. And this became eventually the basis of a big public artwork that she made in one of Stockholm's subway stations. So the photograph on the wall is a one-to-one, I wouldn't say replica, a one-to-one photograph of that public artwork in the subway of Stockholm, and an artwork on the floor by Åsa Elsén. It's a handmade replica of a carpet that existed at the mansion, and it refers to groundbreaking work that 2 of the 5 founders of the school did in terms of ecology and, you could say, ecofeminism. In 1942, in the middle of the Second World War, they published a book, Peace with the Earth, where they claimed that if we want peace, which many people at that very point in time were eager to achieve, you also need to be in peace with the earth. So experimental agriculture was taking place at the estate where the school happened, and the carpet is called fallow. You remember, when you're not using a piece of land, you're not growing anything for a year or so, you're letting the land rest. So that's the title of the carpet, and it is also made for precisely this, to have seminars, discussions, etc. on the carpet, which we did throughout the exhibition period. Just a few more slides. Fogelsta didn't have any direct connection to Kiruna, but there are still connections. So we invited 2 artists who have been looking at the work of 2 important Sami female activists from the turn of the last century, when the school was founded. And we included them. So this is Anders Sunna, a painter, and his portrait of Elsa Laula Renberg. And finally, we decided to also look a little bit into who could have been who could the participants in the courses have been from the region of Norrbotten. So we worked with the local museum in another town, and they helped us find material about around 15 women, some of them quite well known regionally as suffragettes, etc., others completely unknown. So it became almost like a little bit of a local history project in that sense. And now we come back to this spectacular event, the church, which is moving. So it's from 1912. It was commissioned by the mining company and its influential first director, Hjalmar Lundbom, who is often considered the father of Kiruna. He was friends with a number of the most well-known artists of his own time. And he invited them to the town, they made work there, and some of that work has actually stayed with the municipality, and therefore it actually has an interesting art collection. He also, for the church, invited the artist Prins Eugen to make the altarpiece. It's a very unusual altarpiece. It does not include any Christian symbols, no biblical figures. It is just this grove of trees in the center and strong sunlight, but the sun is not visible itself. In other words, spirituality lives in nature. It's almost a pantheistic approach to what a church can be, or what should happen in the space of a church. Is also extremely bright, in contrast to the rest of the interior, which is dark wood painted dark. This altarpiece could not be removed, so it followed the church on its 5-kilometer long journey. I learned about the moving of the church when I came to Kiruna already in September 2023, and thought that, here we might have an interesting project. And I invited an artist who's been interested in the notion of the landscape in art history for about 40 years, and he's been, if you wish, cruising art history and its landscapes in museums, in art history books, often finding moments in paintings where he could see codes that might not be visible to everybody, and where also activities could have taken place which are not really explicitly addressed in the paintings. So it's a queer reading often of landscapes. And he got the permission to dig into the archive of a museum which has the estate of the artist Prins Eugen. He was an interesting person. The youngest son of King Oscar II of Sweden and Queen Sofia. He was allowed to become an artist. In the late 1880s, he went to Paris to private art schools. He became friends with many of the ambitious artists who had gone there at the same time, and he also then and there became a landscape painter, quite an influential one in the context of the Nordics, and also an art collector, supporting other artists. And in this archive of the museum in Stockholm, with the estate of the prince, Mats Lederstam found a one-to-one sketch for the altarpiece. Nobody had looked at it for decades. So we had it renovated, restored, and that is the centerpiece of the exhibition that we are showing now. It opened a week before the move of the church. Mats Lederstam has researched the making of the altarpiece and the friendship between this first director of the mining company and the prince. And he has also made additions to some of the works, including this one. So the top part, which is missing, doesn't exist in the sketch. He has added not something light. On the contrary, it's the polar night. And it's the polar night seen through the grid. He has made research for many years, separate from this, into how artists have used the grid since the Renaissance and how it has been transmitted from generation to generation. And on the sketch, you can clearly see that Prins Eugen also used it. This can seem a bit antiquated. What does that have to do with our time? Well, just think of your devices. As soon as you want to do anything with an image, the grid is still there. So an incredible continuity, actually. So this is now an installation in the lobby of the City Hall. And in the exhibition space, we have a number of very playful paintings by Mats Lederstam. We also found a maquette for the church, made for the construction workers to understand how to build the large structure. And we also borrowed works from the municipal art collection. So now you can see how we're trying to think about the local specificities with many of the projects. And in this case, it was a pleasure to be able to borrow some of the works from the collection of the municipalities by artists that both this first director of the mining company and Prins Eugen were collecting and supporting. And I will just say now a few words about a couple of projects that just kicked off for you to maybe get a feeling of the procedures, let's say, and then it's time to wrap up, and hopefully we can have a Q&A and a conversation. So working long-term, staying with certain issues is important, I think. Not to think of a group exhibition as being enough if you want to address something, if you want to focus on a particular question or an issue, but rather to follow it for several years. And that can happen in various formats. It can be exhibitions, it can be commissions, it can be screening series, it can be seminars, etc. And one that just started this year is called Bori Mesh, a photographer in Sápmi in the age of colonialism. The Kiruna municipality has a large collection of this photographer who was born in the late 19th century and who passed away in 1956, and who is very well known as the person who documented the early years of Kiruna and the surrounding landscape, actually the colonial project in its full swing. So 5 artists have been invited to make new work in relation to this collection and the legacy, and also one professor of photography who knows a lot about photography from this time. So it has not materialized in anything yet, but for the next 3-4 years, there will be a number of instances where this project is being materialized. We do not know now what that will be, and that's part of it. But we know that we can continue, that it should not have an end date. Another similar project is looking at food, art, and the environment. It's called The Benevolent Food, Den goda maten. And it's artists, researchers, architects and others who have shown an interest in this urgent topic, food security not least, and they all gathered in Kiruna in August. And similarly to the Borimesh project, this will evolve over a longer period of time, also including residencies, etc. So a hole in the reel, that is not only a fact in Kiruna with a huge open pit. It's not in use anymore. They stopped that in the early 60s. Now it's all underground, but the hole is still there. That is also the title of our upcoming exhibition in November with Dora Garcia, the artist who is today based in Oslo, born in Madrid. And it's a work by her from some years ago. It's a text work, and she, in turn, is borrowing it from Jacques Lacan, the psychoanalyst. And it's a term that describes what is happening when language collapses. There is a hole in the real when the symbolic doesn't work anymore. And it's not only Dora Garcia. She was invited to relate to Pablo Picasso. And this might seem really odd. Why Pablo Picasso in Kiruna? Well, exactly 60 years ago, a huge retrospective with Picasso happened in the old city hall of Kiruna when the mining company turned 75. So there were more than 100 works by Picasso borrowed from the major museums in Sweden. Now we're borrowing a little more than a dozen of the same works from the Modern Museum in Stockholm. So they're visiting Kiruna a second time. This was what we today would call greenwashing. At the same time, it was an ambitious project by the state of Sweden of mediating art, making art available to a wider audience. And we hope that we can discuss all these issues in the light of Dora Garcia's work. So, a hole in the reel. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's on. Maria, thank you so much for this lecture. So it's indeed time for Q&A. If you have a question for Maria, there's another microphone we can give you. There's already someone there. Great.
Thank you, Maria. That was thank you very much for the presentation. Do you hear me well?
Not so well.
Not so well. Is it better like this?
Yeah, this is better. I think it's also because the speakers are directed towards you
Yes.
for good reasons, and I'm a little bit behind.
Yes, I hear me very well, actually.
Now it's better.
I had a question about, you have been presenting several structural projects, the one on food, the one with the desk by Luca Frey, the one on design that is also very unusual, as you said. And I wanted to know how you work with the team that was there to transmit such an experimental approach of structural project, because that's very experimental and very invigorating, I will say, to develop project like this. But we know that there are many times resistance inside institution to develop structural approach and to invite artists to work on this field. So how do you negotiate this part?
Thank you, Gregory. That's a good question. When I came, the team was tiny. It was 3 people. And most of them were new to the team. I mentioned that there had been some problems prior to my arrival. And actually, most of them found other jobs and moved on shortly after I arrived. So I could recruit all our team members, which is a luxury. And luckily I found great people, both from Kiruna, still based in Kiruna, from the region, and from elsewhere. So I think it's an interesting mix now of people who know a lot about the specificities of the place, and people who can bring in experience and impulses from elsewhere.
Yeah, thanks a lot also for the interesting presentation. And I was wondering if, since you're trying to set up all of these projects in collaboration with artists and with topics that also touch on the realities of Kiruna, has there been a reflection with the municipality on the role that the museum and art can play in, I guess, somehow processing what is happening to the town? Because I can imagine that it must be something short of a collective trauma that your city is being demolished and moved, and how the museum can help somehow play a role in that.
Thank you, Sarah. This is on top of my mind right now. This afternoon, I had a very important online meeting with the owners of KIN, which is the region of Norrbotten, 60%, and the municipality of Kiruna, 40%. And it was partly about exactly what you're asking about, because they are starting to understand what role a museum can play now when the museum is, I would say, operating in a better way than it used to. And none of them has what I would call any art or museum experience or competence. Nevertheless, they can see that a place like Kiruna needs a place like this. And from what they say, I figure that they read it as an important activity in the mix of things going on in a place like Kiruna, which is not a whole lot. Sports is strong, the outdoors is very, very important. But in terms of culture, it's not a lot. And actually, KIN is the only professional cultural institution that is open 52 weeks per year in the municipalities. There is a fantastic Sami theater, but they very rarely play in Kiruna. They play in the whole of Sápmi, and not so much in Kiruna. So that's one thing, that there is cultural activities. That's important for them. But also, recently they've started to comment on the fact that we're doing things that seem to address women, because there is a deficit of women. From Kiruna, the tendency is that women study, they leave to study. Young men, they take a job in the mine. It's really well paid, working in the mine. So often after senior high school, after the gymnasium, many men go to the mine. Women move away to study. So there is an awareness that there have to be things that are attractive for women as well. And after the big news that I mentioned, 1 week after the move of the church, that another 30% of Old Kiruna will be demolished, in the team, we felt that we have to really address this even more. So most likely there will be more projects, more discussions, etc., pertaining specifically to that. And the Picasso and Dora Garcia project will probably be a good starting point.
Thank you for the presentation and inspiring examples that you talked about. I'm asking this question from the point of view an urbanist, an architect. How do you see your mission to make the city more artful? Because you talked about some examples, but I wonder how you see this mission.
Did you say artful or heartful?
Artful.
Heartful.
No, artful. Art.
Artful.
Yes, exactly.
Artful, if I understand you correctly, there has for a long time been a lot of art in Kiruna because of this first director that I mentioned. So public art, maybe more than in your average town in Sweden. I'm not sure what it really did in relation to the population. What I feel is urgent now is to think about how New Kiruna is expanding. Because the bits that have been built so far with the new city hall, etc., is not particularly successful. It's generic. You know, it could be in Brussels, it could be in Copenhagen, it could be in Stockholm. And it's geographically really different, and this depends on that they try to build it on land where they don't think that there is iron ore right underneath. But who knows, there might be. And so New Kiruna might have to move in 50 or 100 years. But the topography is distinctly different. Old Kiruna is built on the low mountain. It's 500 meters above sea level, and you have a sort of mountainous type of land. And New Kiruna is on the mire, it's on the bogs. So it's much lower and it's wet. And it's really windy, so they didn't do their wind studies the way they did when they built Old Kiruna. So in terms of urban issues, it's something very basic about the city plan, the urban plan, and also the architecture itself. Then I think if there can be art involved, that's great, but art cannot be the motor in this. What art can help with is perhaps to think about other methods, other processes, etc. Things that might have been forgotten in certain other formal municipal planning and construction processes.
Thank you.
Hello. Maria, you might have said, but what happens with the land that's left in Old Kiruna? Is there a way that the museum can have any impact there? Is it a no-go zone? Is it being occupied by the mine in any particular way? Is it just left abandoned? What happens there? And have you thought about how the museum might be able to address that?
Thank you, Vivian. This is really important. About 30% of Kiruna has already been torn down. That is now a so-called park, and it has been accessible until quite recently. Most likely it will not remain accessible. And the area that will now be torn down in the next 10 years will also not be that accessible. And this is connected to the risk of implosion. So the straight answer is no, I don't think there is much we can do. In the first area, the Public Art Agency in Stockholm, which is the 1% rule type of organization, did projects in that first park area, but they are already forgotten. It's a little more than 10 years ago, and that was ephemeral in that sense.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question on the art production itself. So from what I understood, it's more like an auto-curated, more participatory form of art, right? And if I can make a gross generalization. I feel like there's some parallels to be drawn with what we see in, for example, like African art, where there's a lot of thematics on vernacular architecture and collective memory, collective trauma. And in the West, there's more like an individual expression, like individual artists producing art from like their own perception or like with their own name and tag. Where do you see the balance in the art production of the Kin Museum, in the sense that how much do you see as the artist brings a sort of individual interpretation of these themes, or how do you prevent that a lot of the art becomes a bit monotonous in the sense of like they're working on the same thematics and it's just a slight alteration? Like, how do you curate that as an art institute? I hope that my question is clear.
If I heard you correctly, how do we curate the program so that it is not repetitive in terms of what you described as artists with a signature, individual artists, by inviting a variety of artists whose practice is diverse? That might not have been so clear in what I presented, but there are also artists who work in a different manner. I would say that what we're doing is pretty eclectic if you compare to other art institutions, and I hope that it will remain so. My approach, if you wish, is really that I'm not a promoter of, let's say, only social practice or participatory practice type works, or only performance, or only painting, or only conceptual work. I'm interested in really strong examples or cases within all of these. And I dare say that we work with the most relevant and interesting contemporary art today that I am aware of, ranging from the emerging to the really well established.
Okay, thank you.
Imagining the atmosphere and the urban condition from what you were telling us, the trauma has already been mentioned. I am also thinking of or imagining that it must be like a state of living on the edge, because like the mind comes closer and closer, which reminds me of other locations on the planet where we might have similar conditions. And my question is, have you already made the connection with some coastal areas or coastal areas that are threatened by rising sea levels, or archipelago states in Southeast Asia? That's a connection that I would find interesting. Maybe you've already thought about it, how to treat this topic in a artful way.
Thank you. That's an interesting one. We have not been in touch specifically with artists in Southeast Asia, etc., but it can very well come. I'm talking to a colleague who is an institutional director in Switzerland in terms of artists and others interested in the melting of the glaciers, which is a hot topic for both of us. So that's maybe an example along the lines that I think you were after somehow. So definitely hooking up with practitioners and institutions, etc., in other parts of the world where there might be similar issues at stake. And in relation to what I believe many of you are involved with, urban issues of various kinds, the landscape is mountainous, it's tundra, and then you have this town. So it's not really rural the way we think about the rural. The connotations are perhaps mostly connected to agriculture, etc. It's a different type of landscape, but it's still a used landscape, so it's not wilderness. The Sami are there and have been there for hundreds of years using the landscape, but it's part of their culture and their tradition not to leave so many traces. That's actually what you absolutely should not do. It should not be visible where you've been staying, etc. So it's an interesting context, and I would say that I feel, compared to where I've worked elsewhere, that I'm absolutely in the midst of the most important questions of our time. Although for some people it might seem remote, because this is where extractivism, indigenous rights, climate change, it's so palpable. There is no way you can close your eyes to that.
Okay, I also have a question. I was wondering, so the museum is located in the city hall. The museum is located in the city hall, so actually you are sharing a building with local politicians. And I was wondering, does this have an impact on the functioning of the museum, on the audiences coming to the museum in any good or any bad way? So,
thank you. Our most immediate context is a municipal structure. I find that fascinating. I know that some of the employees of the municipality come by for their lunch break, etc. We also try and lure them in a more organized manner by offering guided tours and the usual stuff. The more visible thing is maybe the inhabitants of Kiruna, because the old city hall was thought of as an extended living room. And it was a multi-purpose space, the big open lobby there. And this has continued in the new city hall. And that's a positive side of that building. So I'm amazed at how people are using the space. There is a cafe nowadays in the lobby as well. There is a bus stop nearby, the most central one in New Kiruna. Temperatures can go down to minus 20, 25, 30. It's a pretty nice place to wait for the bus inside. So the use of the space of the city hall is interesting and sometimes beautiful. And of course, lots of tourists. It should be mentioned that Kiruna is the destination for many tourists. People come to hike, people come to experience the snow, Aurora Borealis, the northern light, to ski, etc. So there is a steady flow of people. You hear all kinds of languages every day. But I also like the fact that we're close to this sort of public entity, a municipality. And again, a bit like these big issues of our time that I mentioned, we cannot deny that we are part of that. They're also one of our two owners. And, you know, maybe I carry some secret wish to clandestinely educate the politicians to understand a bit better what art is actually doing.
okay, thank you.
I have a question. I was wondering, does your art or the function, what is the function of your art in terms of resistance? Did it spark anything? Is it sparking? Is that something that you explicitly are provoking, implicitly are hoping for? And is there resistance in general? And I was not there in the beginning, so you might have touched upon it. But
since this most recent piece of news about the next 30% being torn down, many people have asked, why is there not more resistance? And I would say that there is not a lot of visible resistance, and now I speak about people living and working in Kiruna, but I know that it is there, and people harbor a lot of strong feelings about what is going on. Historically, there have been a strong protest culture in terms of striking miners, and that has been expressed through graffiti and so on. When it comes to art, Britta Marakatlaba, the artist with the embroidery and the appliqué, there is definitely an aspect of her work being super critical of what is going on in terms of the mine, for example. And in addition to that being expressed in sometimes rather poetic ways in her work, she's also an activist. So she would be visible at demonstrations. There haven't been demonstrations in Kiruna, but in other places. And we spoke a little bit earlier before here about artists dealing with grief. I was thinking then about what happened 2 years ago when the young members of the 2 Sami communities on whose land Kiruna is built were staging a performance, a procession, which was a mourning and grieving procession in relation to that exactly where the city hall is built used to be one of the passageways for the reindeer, moving from the summer grazing land in the mountains to the winter grazing lands in the forest areas towards the southeast. So some protests, yes, but maybe less than one would have thought or even hoped in a public manner.
Someone has a final question to close off the lecture? No? Okay. Then we can indeed close the lecture. Maybe just before we thank Maria Lind for her great lecture, there is a participatory part of this lecture. Namely, we are also using this hall. So if we can kindly ask you to help us with moving the chairs to the back and help us setting up the tables again. That's the participatory element of this lecture. So thank you for helping us. And again, thank you, Maria Lind, for a wonderful lecture.
Thank you.